Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we discuss my thoughts on episode 9 of the anime series Masamune-kun's Revenge. And this entire affair is all kinds of effed up. This entire framework calling on the past of Neko and her very much risking life and limb in the present just to experience romance, just to have a sense of love, no matter how fleeting it would turn out to be with Makabe and Adagakiaki and all that kind of stuff. It's just insane. It's kind of sickening on the one hand that she would play this grand game, create this grand farce out of risking her own well-being and the idea of her uncertain future, but at the same time you kind of have to be sympathetic toward her because she's just trying to find something grounding her, something that will make her feel more human and like she's actually been able to experience life, where her future is uncertain. She doesn't know how much longer of a life she has to live. And it's something that, we find in this grand sort of farcical setup that she's concocted. There are kernels of truth. She actually did know Makabe in childhood. We see his mother getting them together as kids, and they're said to have looked very similar, kind of chubby-esque, as little children, which answers to a speculation I had, did Neko actually, was she chubby in youth and similar to Makabe, and they had gotten together because he was apparently one out of a stack of a bunch of pictures for potential suitors in her wish to marry, and apparently this was something, Makabe's mother had set up in childhood, an arranged marriage that never came to pass. And all of Neko's life, we see that she was ailing and she was very popular, but, there's only so much she could do. And when faced with this sort of sense of her own mortality, she wanted to really full-on experience love, and she called back on this boy she knew in her childhood. It just so happens to be the same boy Adagakiaki knows on our main character, Makabe. And that's all kinds of insane and interesting. It was interesting to see how quickly to the jump Aki was in wanting to find Neko and make sure she was all right, even though she doesn't like her. She even admits to that fact. Makabe's like, I thought you didn't like her. What? Why are you so concerned all of a sudden? And she's like, well, I kind of know what that feels like, to be rejected by someone you really like, you really love. And it hurts, and I feel for her. Even though I don't like her, she's been playing around with us and everything like that, I can understand that. I can relate to that. And this kind of goes right over Makabe's head because, look at what game he's playing. He's trying to get revenge on Aki, never once realizing that there was much more to their own relationships in their past. Obviously, as we see through the flashbacks, Aki was smitten with Makabe as the plump little boy he was. Somehow, a miscommunication came to the effect where he felt he wasn't good enough for her as this plump little fat boy, and he needed to go become fit and exercise and get rid of all that fat and look awesome and cool and popular. And all of these things, it was the poor choice for Aki because something spurred her away, I don't exactly know what that was. Perhaps it was the arranged marriage with Neko. Maybe Aki as a child found out that he was already promised to someone else, and this split them apart and set them on this grand, dividing and divisive journey. And now they're both kind of too stuck up and pig-headed to even realize how much they matter to each other in the here and now. They're probably going to ruin each other's lives before they ever get around to that. All for nonsense. And Neko, being the way she is, when finally, Makabe starts to think about it, he recalls back to the manga that she had, loved the third chapter of and everything, or the third novel of. And there was a bit about being up on the roof of the school and sending love letters, because of the lovelorn sensation, unrequited love. And this is where he thinks to find her at the school because she doesn't have her wallet, she doesn't have any money, she doesn't have any communication devices or anything like that. They don't know where to track her. And it would have to be somewhere, wherever she ended up, would have to be somewhere within walking distance, safely so, from her apartment, from her digs, without any of that stuff. And especially considering her frailty, it wouldn't be that she would have gotten that far. And so they're looking in malls and shopping centers and stores and all this kind of stuff. But he gets the idea. And it's interesting that Aki comes to the same basic conclusion. They meet each other right outside the school. And this is where the turning point, the tipping point for me in the episode happens, because he's kind of peeved at how he's feeling about Neko, what Neko revealed to him. He's distrusting his own sensation that maybe she was lying. Maybe she, just wanted to use me. Maybe I was wrong about all of that. Maybe she actually does like me. And he's in this penultimate conflict internally that makes him, when confronted with Aki, he point blank asks her, "Do you remember the name Pig's Foot?" And that took me aback. And I was really like, oh crap, the whole tide of the show just turned into a new direction if he's going to reveal that to her. And of course, she it sounds familiar to her, but we don't get any action in that moment, because then he notices the paper airplanes, the unrequited love messages being sent off the rooftop, and they find Neko, and she collapses in his arms and all this stuff. They bring her to the hospital. And really, I'm just left wondering. We find subsequently, while they're in the hospital, the class rep chick admits to the fact that she still likes Makabe, and I'm still kind of rueful about that. He's been so pointedly wanting to take Aki down a peg that here he has a chance with a really genuine, heartwarming, compassionate girl in the class rep, and he's never for once going to give that a chance, because he just wants to take Aki down a peg. Similarly with Neko, he couldn't trust Neko. And it turns to be there is truth to that. She's been hiding her ailment. She's been putting on a facade. There is some level of she was just acting out a part to try to encapsulate the emotions she was trying to experience before she would have to leave and deal with her own mortality on a more personal, surgical basis. So that, she did feel spurned. She did feel turned away and rejected by Makabe. And that's really all she got out of it, but it's still satisfying to her that she was able to feel something more human, more real world, more grounded, than always having to worry about being so frail and being so ill and all this stuff, and not being able to really accomplish anything or do anything or amount to anything or experience anything in life. And so you have this grand sort of sequence where first Aki goes in, Neko requests to talk to her, and we don't find out exactly what that is until the end that they shared between them. But then Makabe and Neko talk, and they talk a little bit about their past, and it's funny, Makabe's reaction to the idea. We were in arranged marriage? What? That little bitch, my mother, and everything. I thought that was hilarious, but, again, I still felt somewhat sympathetic toward Neko because she just wanted to experience something. She knew so much of her life was unpromised to her, and that was really her motivation. She just kind of, by happenstance, remembered Makabe and chose him to be the one to sort of pointedly make the subject of her affections in the here and now, but, at least she was able to accomplish something for herself. To actually feel something, to actually feel more human. And that unrequited love is like the most human you can be, to have that sensation. Better to have loved and lost than never have loved before. That old cliche, as I say. It's very much answering to what Neko has experienced. And she's able to kind of put it to bed by that time. But this completely discombobulates Makabe. And it was interesting how Aki went to go up to him and talk to him. We've seen, of course, mismatches like this before throughout the course of the series, where it seems like she's starting to warm to him. Something she might have spoken back and forth with Neko makes her want to gravitate toward him and maybe apologize, maybe say something to him, maybe answer to his question about the pig's foot and everything like that. But he's in a world of his own, and he completely just shuns her and walks past her and walks past everyone. He leaves the hospital. And everyone will eventually end up leaving as well, and you have the sort of servant or protector, whatever you want to call it, of Neko saying, should we actually let him leave and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, yeah, we're done. Yeah, we're done with this for now. But Makabe's got a lot to mull over, and I was really surprised at just how pig-headed, pig's foot this son of a bitch was, that his aggravation comes to the fore again. And he's like, no, I'm not going to be like Neko, but I'm going to do exactly what Neko did anyway, even though I'm verbalizing, no, I'm not going to go down the same path that Neko did, to be smacked upside the head, to have the lies become, revealed and all this kind of stuff, and feel unrequited love and feel distraught and disdained, and I'm not going to live that life, I'm not going to go down that path. But then he resolves to do exactly that, to go down that path, to continue pursuing Aki in a sense of ruining her. And it was like facepalm city. I was just like, oh, F's sake, what is wrong with you? And because, it's like I said, whether it's the class rep, whether it was Neko, whether it was Aki, these characters, they can actually find something good in each other, within each other. Being together, to see that Aki was so smitten with Makabe as the plump little boy, and something got between them. It's almost like they're made for each other. This is how it is destined to be brought back together. And then they threw me for a mother effing loop. Aki is reflecting, now having been reminded of Masamune, the plump little boy that was her friend that she was so smitten with in her childhood, who she called Pigfoot. Again, we still need a full-on clarification of what exactly burgeoned that divide between them in their youths and everything like that. But never once, because of her own sort of stuffed shirtedness, her own pig-headedness, does she associate Masamune Makabe, Masamune from childhood. No. No, that's too easy. That would be too easy for her to figure that out, right? So rather does she go out onto her property, sitting next to a water fountain, and just sort of reflecting on, do I feel for him? Do I not feel for him? Do I feel for Masamune of old? How do I feel for him? Blah, 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 blah. And then out of nowhere comes a plump, very sort of in the here and now, Masamune from childhood-esque character, whom I believe immediately to be Tanabe, or the Pudding Prince, as Aki once gave him the humiliating nickname of. And, we saw Makabe kind of making amends with him a little bit, kind of, sort of. He got very sort of, he went after Adagaki Aki with scissors and was going to cut her hair or something like that. He got very sort of murderous to go after her because of the humiliation he felt at her hand. And now here he is in a dreamlike state, walking up, and she immediately assumes this is Masamune of old. This is her childhood friend. Forget Makabe. Forget Makabe, Masamune. This cat, Tanabe, the Pudding Prince, just comes out of nowhere. He's apparently been effing stalking her. He knows enough about what's going on and to know that he's going to pretend to be this childhood friend of hers that she was smitten with, that she feels was lost to her, while Makabe has a renewed resolve by the end of the episode to get back to training and make himself hunky and fit and cool and all this kind of stuff. It was like a smack upside the head that Tanabe just came out of nowhere and makes the moves on Aki, and she in that moment believes this is the Masamune of old. I'm half willing to bet the next episode sees them walking into class hand in hand, much in love. And this is the new direction everything will take, where Makabe will now have to try to win her affections back from Tanabe, who she thinks is the kid she knew from childhood, while Makabe is the real, genuine article. It's just like, oh my effing God, what the hell? So, this episode, the entire scenario was all kinds of effed up. As I said at the start of the video, from Neko risking life and limb just to experience love, unrequited though it may have been, and Makabe renewing his resolve to stay fit and get back at Aki. Aki's sort of uncertainty and pig-headedness and remembering the boy of old that she actually was very smitten with, but something created a divide between them. Possibly it was Neko and that arranged marriage. We're not exactly sure as of yet what it was, what the catalyst was for splitting them apart, for making him think that he needed to be fit and cool and awesome to gain her affections, whereas she was very much as it seemed Neko was happy with him the way he was as a kid. And then Tanabe making his move, coming back into the story after we haven't seen him for so long. And it's kind of hilarious that is the fact, that is the case, because every time I see him in the OP, there's the one shot in the OP with Makabe looking at Tanabe, And in the early going, I was almost kind of making the association that this was him seeing a mirror image of his former self, what his former self, the plump little fat boy, would look like in the here and now. And maybe he was going to give up trying to be so fit and so cool, and that would be how he would end up looking again, because he would realize Aki could have loved him for that. And even though Neko was kind of full of it, you know, she kind of gave that impression as well. But here do we find, no, that is not Makabe, that is Tanabe. And the pudding prince cometh. And just add another sort of, you know, hurdle to this overall story. I don't even know anymore. So I guess we will see what the hell happens next. Love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you were as shocked and surprised as I was that Tanabe came in, the Pudding Prince came in at the very end and made a move and is back into the story in a very sort of paramount, you know, framework. All the stuff with Neko. Did you feel for her? Did you feel sympathetic? Did you think she was stupid? And, you know, all this kind of stuff. And how do you feel about Makabe and Aki, that they're still so sort of caught up in their own worlds to even perceive who they are to each other and who they can be to each other? I mean, it's just kind of like, you know, facepalm sitting, as I said. Let me know that in the comments below, and otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.